It's great to be back with you again. I have a friend back with me in Tennessee today. Kirk Cameron is here, or Mike Sievers is in the house, whichever you prefer.
I answer to both.
Because I bet you get that wherever you go.
I do, and it's a sweet, endearing term of endearment to me when people say, "Hey, Mikey, how you doing?" I know that they grew up in the same era that I did, and we probably have a lot in common.
Grew up in the same era that you did. You just made me feel old all of a sudden.
The decade.
Yeah,
the decade that I grew up in.
So how old were you when you started with Growing Pains?
I was 9 years old when my mother took me down to an agent. This was a talent agent in Hollywood. We lived just outside of Hollywood, and she said, this could be fun. Who knows? Maybe you could get a job on a commercial and you'd make a few $1,000s, and we could save that up for your college tuition. And so I didn't want to be an actor. I didn't even know what being an actor meant, but I went down, auditioned. I got a part on a fruit roll-up commercial. I got a McDonald's commercial and several others. And it was so much fun that I just kept going. And there were days when I hated it. I wanted to play basketball with my friends, and my mom instead would put a nice freshly pressed golf shirt on me and brush my hair and tuck my shirt in and drive me for 2 hours downtown to an audition. And then I'd get home, too late to do my homework. And so it wasn't fun as a kid, but there was something in me that really did enjoy it. And so I kept up with it.
So what'd your friends say when they knew you're doing commercials and they
think you're so great now. Oh, you think you're so... There was a little bit of that, but my good friends, it didn't really faze them much until I was working on Growing Pains. So when I was 14, I started working on Growing Pains, and that was an all day, every day thing. So I didn't even go to my school, and so I had a different set of friends at work from 9 to 5, and then I'd come home, and of course, it's dinner time, and my friends really shifted at that point. And then when I went back at the end of the year, we would film from, say, September through till maybe March, and I had a couple months left of school. So during the year, I would go to school on the set. But when the show was over, I had to go back to my regular school with all my pals. And that was always awkward because that's when you came back and they were like, "Oh, who's the movie star guy? Who does he think he is?" And then my friends would be like, "Hey, Kirk, how's it going?" And then their friends would sort of think they were buttering up to me. They were kissing up to the movie star guy. And so then they would sort of stay away from me because they didn't want to, And so it got very awkward. And pretty soon I stopped going back to my regular high school, and I completed all my schooling on the set, even when the show was not in production.
That's a lot to process when you're young.
Yeah, it is, in front of millions of people. And so everything you do and, all of the magazines and the tabloids and all that, they're trying to get their stories. And it was fun. It was an adventure, but it was also testing.
I'm sure. We hear the horror stories about all the young people, child stars, and the Hollywood stuff. But you seem to have navigated that pretty well.
Well, you got to remember, Alan, I'm an actor. I could be faking this whole integrity thing.
You've been torturing pets just before we started this?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the vote of confidence and the encouragement. When I was about 17 years old, this was right at the height of the success of Growing Pains in 1987, I had a friend who invited me to go to church with her. And I had never been to a church because I was an atheist. And I went to church, and I had no idea who Chuck Swindoll was, but apparently he was the pastor. And I sat in the back row of this church, and he delivered a message that really caught my attention. He preached from the Bible. I didn't believe in the Bible, but he did. And he did a great job of really getting me to think about the fact that one day I would die and I would stand before this God that he spoke of. Even though I didn't believe in him, I thought I could be wrong. Maybe these great questions of science that my teachers couldn't answer really were answered only in a powerful creator. And so I asked him a lot of questions. He answered many of them, told me that I needed to humble myself and go to God in prayer. I didn't know how to do that, but one day in my sports car, I decided that I may die that day, and I ought to try to pray. And so I just prayed in the front seat of my car, parked on the side of the road in Hollywood, California, and asked God to forgive me and give me faith and make me the man I'm supposed to be. And that was the beginning of my spiritual journey, being a follower of Christ.
Wow, that's a miracle of grace.
It is.
It
is. And I love that you say that, because some people say things like, "Oh, just salvation is easier than you could possibly imagine." And I just say, well, wait a minute. I could tell you, I wasn't searching for God when I came under conviction, when I heard the sermon preached. I know that the Bible says that without God, it's impossible for me to do any good thing apart from God. And an early pastor in my life said to me, "Kirk, if anybody asks you, how did you find God in Hollywood? I want to remind you of something. That was a miracle of grace. You didn't find God. He wasn't lost. You were, and he found you."
Absolutely. But there's hope in that. If God could find you with all of the distraction of Hollywood, it feels like to me he could find anybody.
I think so. Absolutely. He could even find somebody buried, in the South, right underneath the buckle, the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Hillbillies for Jesus. Amen.
Yeah, because I do wonder sometimes where it is easier to see the light of the gospel. Is it in the dark and dead cultures where there is no light, and you hear the gospel so clearly and you think, "Oh my gosh, this is like somebody, it's been like I've been living in the darkness and someone just flipped on a light and now I can see everything"? Or is it more difficult to see the light in a place where there's a church on every corner and it's like looking up to the sky trying to find a star? You can't see them. They're there, but everyone's talking about Jesus. There's churches everywhere. There's religious radio. There's Bibles on every shelf. And I wonder if people have a harder time finding it in a place like here.
I think that's more than wondering. I think that's biblical. Jesus came to his own. He came to the Jewish people, the chosen people, and walked amongst them, and they missed the Messiah in their midst. There's a lesson for us in that. I think
that's true.
It's easier to see the light when you're in the darkness.
And then again, like you said, I also believe it still is a miracle of God, Easier, harder, environment, culture, yes, but at the end of the day, God's got to open my eyes or I'm as blind as a bat.
But the miracle piece of that, the typical testimony we hear is, you have all those good things and your life's on this crazy trajectory, and then you make stupid mistakes and you lose it all, and then from the pit you cry out to God. Yeah. You seem to have missed a lot of that middle step. I know there had to be pain in there, but you made some wise choices with God's good help.
Thankfully, I didn't turn out as the typical Hollywood product, a young teenage actor, musician, artist, whatever. You expect to see them on the cover of People magazine with a gun in their hand, or a mugshot in jail, or charged with some sort of awful crime. I didn't go through that, but again, I think that encourages me, and I think it should encourage everybody, that you don't have to be the drug addict in the gutter in order to find Jesus. You can be the kid that grew up with a pastor as his dad, going to church every single weekend, and you can have just as important, miraculous, and dramatic of a testimony, because like we said, it can be harder to find Jesus in those environments. So I still think that the A plan for bringing heaven to earth is parents raising their kids to know and love the Lord, right? God tells us that, train up your child in the way he should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart from it. And while some people want this more dramatic testimony, I would say, if God has spoken to you and opened your eyes and your ears, come to him with a grateful heart, and he will do miraculous things with your life.
Amen. You are a very outspoken advocate for family. Maybe tell us a little bit about yours, because it's not just a theory for you. You have some family experience.
Yeah. I've had my share of growing pains. We have a full house, and my son is rolling his eyes over there, going, "Oh, Dad, these are really bad dad jokes." So let's see. My wife Chelsea and I met on the set of Growing Pains. She was my girlfriend on the show. I love to tell people that I married Mike Seaver's girlfriend. I stole her right out from underneath him, and married her. We've been married for 28 years. We just celebrated 28 years, and we have 6 children. So our house has been full of lots of craziness for the last 20-something years, and now our kids are growing up. My youngest son, James, is here with me. He's 16. And then the others are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Maybe I had, actually, that may be 7. I think it's just 19. No, that's right. That's right.
That's amazing.
I can't imagine how the Duggars must do it. How do you keep them all straight?
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
You'd have to keep a chart on the wall.
I do, with only 6.
Well, you spend a lot of time now traveling the country, trying to encourage and strengthen the family. Tell me what you're seeing about there when you're interacting with all those folks.
My wife said something once, Alan. She said, the strength of because I'm always talking about the country and the nation, and I love the story of our Christian roots and the pilgrims and the principles our nation was founded on, especially today when our kids are being told such a different story about America and how we were founded. And she said, but you got to always remember that the strength of a nation, it depends on the integrity of the home. And the pilgrims understood that. They understood that it's got to start in the heart. The strength of a home really depends on the integrity of the man, of the mom, of the dad, and teaching those kids. And so it starts in the heart and it works its way out to the family and through the church into the culture. And that's how you get a strong nation. So what I see is, in fact, I'm going to be talking about this this evening. I think that this young generation has got additional challenges that we didn't have growing up. With social media and technology, there is so much information. There are so many microphones and platforms, people telling them things that not only as a nation do I think we've forgotten who we are. I think that we have created a generation of children who don't know who they are, and they're desperately seeking for a sense of identity. It's true, my kids come home from school every day, and there's always some conversation about gender identity. The kitchen table will be all on fire with arguments or whatever about racial identity or sexual identity and how do I express my identity. Identity seems to be in crisis. And so if a dad doesn't know who he is and his God-given role, if a mom and a wife, she doesn't know who she is, she'll not know why she's here. And if kids don't understand who they are, it's no wonder that they act like animals. It's no wonder that they think, well, I can just get as much fun out of life as I can, and why can't I have the Instagram life that I see all these celebrities have? And they don't seem to understand cause and effect. They don't seem to understand a lot of really basic things that I think are really going to turn around and bite them soon. So I like to talk about starting with, who are we? What does the Creator say about us? Why are we here? And what's the point of living? That's what I try to talk about in the marriage and parenting conferences. And then I also want to drill down a little deeper and get a little bit more rich with biblical content tonight and tomorrow morning.
I think that is so important. And honestly, I think the church is afraid on a lot of times to open the dialogue on that. And then I think we've almost lost our ability to have a dialogue.
Yeah.
We start shouting at one another and we get heated so quickly. And so how do we help with that? I mean, the Bible says God created us male and female. We don't hate anybody. Helping everybody find the place God created us to be and flourish without condemning or criticizing.
Yeah.
The point of the Bible is not to beat us down, it's to lift us up.
Amen.
So if we're going to deliver that message, we have to figure out how to deliver that message without compromising the truth, but without condemning people.
Yeah.
And I think you do that really, really well. I mean, I've listened to quite a bit of your stuff. And
oh, thanks.
I appreciate your message.
Thank you. And that means a lot coming from you, because I consider you a wonderful pastor, an excellent Bible teacher, and that counteracts a bit of the hate mail I've received from people who don't agree with you and who think that I'm not gracious enough in the way I say things. But I agree. I've always found it to be a challenge. I mean, how do you go to a friend who you know is not living up to all that God had created them to be in whatever way? Whether it's pick the issue that is making them struggle, and talk with them without them feeling condemned or criticized or that you're complaining, and that you just really love them and you want to have them see God's best in their life. That's always a challenge, and I don't do it I don't do it as well as I would like to do it, but we need to keep trying. Maybe the more we try, the better we'll get. And God is with us.
He is. He will help us. It's His initiative. We just serve at His pleasure. But you said something that intrigues me. You were talking about identity and how there's so much confusion around all those separate issues. It seems to me that the digital world has brought crazy specificity to our lives, personalization. When I was a kid, we watched television. There was 3 broadcast channels, and you watched what was ever on when it was on.
Yeah.
Now we all watch what we want, when we want, where we want, on the device I want. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, we navigated with a map. Now we've got GPS. Everything about my life is so specific, except who I am as a person. And
that's up for debate.
Yeah, you just figure that out. You have to get up every morning and decide who and what you are.
Yeah.
And that's a burden that's unbearable.
Sounds like freedom on the surface, right? It just sounds like unendless menu items, right? But if I don't lock in on who I am, if I don't drive a stake in the ground, how am I ever going to have an anchor in terms of who I am, why I'm here, my morality, my convictions, what I'm all about? That's like having a kite with a string attached and nobody holding the other end. It's when you anchor that thing that kite can rise against the wind that blows. So we've got to anchor our identity, Alan, and so I'm trying to make my contribution tonight and tomorrow.
I think you do a whole lot more than tonight and tomorrow. Thank you for what you do. But discipline is an expression of love. A lack of discipline is to be unloved. It's true in the home. It's true in our culture.
Yeah.
And we struggle with that so much. You do some real practical stuff. I listen to your stuff around social media and kids, and you're raising a house full of kids in Hollywood. God bless your pointed head. So talk a little bit about that whole social media and how you've kind of worked through that. Those are just some specifics that'll help folks.
Yeah. So I created a documentary called Connect that came out a little while ago, and it was a real eye-opening experience for me. It starts with one Mother's Day. My wife went shopping, and I was excited for her to come back and, with a new pair of shoes or something she was really excited about. And she came back with bags full of gifts for the kids. And it's just like her. She loves to go out on Mother's Day and buy gifts for the ones who made her a mother. And so she decided to get all of the kids smartphones. Now, we had talked about this beforehand, and I was not real excited about it because I liked the peace and quiet. I liked the lack of drama without social media. But we realized that they were going to have to learn because they were getting older and moving into the real world, and we couldn't just keep them in this bubble. So we got them phones, and immediately we saw the potholes, the traps, and the challenges that were coming with this. And those little phones are awesome for, little computers and cameras and all kinds of great things, checking my email and text, but they can also be used for such evil. And every parent understands that. So I interviewed 5 experts, a neuroscientist, a pastor, a family counselor, a psychologist, a technology expert. And I learned how to help our kids navigate through the jungle of technology without being a victim, and helping them to become champions so that they can use technology for good and not for evil. One of the great things that my wife decided to do was after we locked all of the parental controls down on the phone so that they didn't have access to horrible, nasty, wicked things, my wife would then say things like, hey, let's find out how Facebook works, or let's find out about this app over here so that you can communicate with your soccer team and share pictures. And she would download the app onto her phone with the kids with no passwords, and the kids would create an account together with my wife, and they would use that app on her phone. Not on their own phone, not behind a password at 11 o'clock at night in their bed in the dark. That's when the difficult, horrible things happen. But on her phone in the day. And as they had fun with the app and as they became more responsible, she would let the rope out a little bit more. They'd have the freedom, and then they could transfer that app onto their own phone. And we'd slowly sort of open the opportunities for them until they got to be on their own. And now my son's married and my other kids have moved out of the house. And of course, there's no parental controls. But what I'm hoping is that through our example and some of the things that we've learned, they've downloaded something that you can never download from the internet. And that's a filter called character. And the fear of God And I'm hoping that that has been woven into the fabric of their heart and now gives them a love for integrity and purity that is greater than their love for sin.
I wish I'd have said that. Character. How do we help people have that desire to build character? Because I don't see that as a value or a virtue that people are chasing after a lot.
I don't know that I have the answer to that, Alan, but I share your desire for people to want that. They used to call it virtue. The virtues of love and patience and kindness and cleanliness. It's like the Boy Scout. What is that? That little list of virtues or whatever it is. I swear on my Boy Scout honor to clean my fingernails and not lie to my dad and make my bed every morning and all those things. But character, what is character? I mean, maybe you could just tell me a great definition for character. But I think of the quality of your heart. I think of who are you when nobody's looking, when you're all by yourself. Who are you really? That shows your character. If you could get away with it, what would you be willing to do? That's where character starts to reveal itself to me.
I think there's two sides. I think there's that private place if nobody's watching who you are. And then I think who you are when those invitations are put in front of you in the public place. Do you have the courage to make those choices then?
Yeah, when everybody's watching.
If you get
and
those
the heat is
two
on.
boundaries right, because those are temptations. But there's a lot of ways to get to character. You said it a minute ago. It starts with the fear of God, that respect, reverence for God.
Yeah.
We treat God with respect. He gets to make the calls and we don't.
Yeah.
And the reason I think it's so important for young people is to finish life well. If you're going to finish this journey well, you're going to have to form some character.
Yeah.
Everybody's pretty at the starting line. We all look good. We've got our outfits on and our shoes are good. And at the finish line, everybody's ugly. Everybody's sweaty and your shirt's out and you're gasping for breath. But it's how you finish that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And that's a character issue. And I have this passion for the young people to get that. That's why your life is such, I think, a blessing. Because in spite of all the wonderful things that have happened to you, you're still in the game and still giving it your best. I mean, your son's with you today. And so far, he hadn't thrown anything at you. And I mean, that's not a small thing. So thank you for that.
It's a scary thing as a dad to have your kids sitting in the front row when you're preaching a sermon, isn't it? Because they can give you that look that will just drain all your confidence.
Well,
like nobody else can.
You either have your son sitting there or your dad sitting there. Either one of those ends, there's little scary stuff.
But you know what? I don't know that I could have my wife sitting there. How do you do it? Because she could just give that little sign like, wrap it up, partner. It's getting long, or oh, that joke just laid flat. And oh boy, that'd just preoccupy me for the next 10 minutes.
Well, you've been married long enough. They don't need a sign. There's a look that you can read across the room, right?
That's it.
Communicates a lot. I have a question, different topic. Hollywood from the Christian community, I think, takes a lot of complaints and criticism. But it's such an important place. The creativity, the media, everything that is generated out of there. You've got a lot more experience in that world than I do. How do we pray for the people in that set of industries with that set of influences? Because there's so much potential for the kingdom of God.
You're right. And I think one of the things that has shifted people's mindset with regard to Hollywood, I think there was a day where people thought, boy, Hollywood is nothing more than a modern day Sodom. If God's gonna if God gets, angry enough, he's just gonna, cut California off or Hollywood off and just have it fall into the ocean because of so much filth that comes out of Hollywood. But, Hollywood didn't start off that way. In fact, if I remember the story right, the man who owned most of that land out there was giving away free parcels of land to anyone who would come there and start a church. And there was all sorts of standards that had to be met for you to make a movie because the movie makers knew that the church was so strong that they didn't want the movies to contain things that would offend the people in the congregations because they wanted to come buy tickets. And so they had these it wasn't really ratings, but it was something similar to that. They wanted to pass the morality test. And today, Hollywood has become so influential, like you said, but we look at it like it's this dirty place that we just don't want our kids to go to. And I understand that. But we're to take positions of leadership, not just in the pulpit and on the missionary field, but let's take them in areas that influence our culture greatest. I mean, be honest. What is influencing your kids, if you have kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, What is influencing them more in their character and in who they're becoming? Is it the youth group at your church, or is it everyone they're listening to on their social media accounts?
Wow. I give you my church answer, or I can tell you the truth. Which
Yeah. And so why would we not want to infiltrate positions of leadership in the world of social media and technology and movies and television and music? And let's go further into local politics and state politics and national politics. None of it's perfect. All of it needs to be reformed. There's plenty of darkness in there, but that's just changed when we bring light into it. So pray for Hollywood, but I think the way you do that is just pray for individuals. I think there's plenty of Christians there who can make a massive difference if they would just have the courage to come out of the closet. You know, coming out of the closet is a celebrated action for certain groups of people, but Christians are told often to keep their mouth closed, keep their faith quiet, and essentially they're hiding in a closet. Pray that they would come out and they would be able to express their faith in a way that was attractive and strong and full of courage. And then we outside of Hollywood, I mean, I'm inside and outside, we need to support those people, you know?
Amen.
I mean, I think of all the great sermons you preach, but if nobody comes and listens, if nobody comes and supports the church, how effective can that be to bring change in the community? We want to support World Outreach Church. And so we need to support those movies and those things, those coming out of Hollywood that we believe in. And by doing that, we'll have more and more of an impact and help those in Hollywood to be more effective.
Makes sense. I think if we can change our attitude, it will change our behaviors. You know, rather than be angry and critical and condemning and wait for California to fall in the ocean, as you said. You know, the Bible uses the image that we're a body. And if I have an infection in my hand, I don't want it amputated. I want the rest of my body's immune system to help my hand get better.
Yeah.
And I think rather than be angry, if we'll start to pray, if we'll humble ourselves and say, but for the grace of God, I'm in the same boat.
Yep.
And we will start to really pray with compassion. We'll see God do what you're saying, raise up voices in that. He brought you out of that. He's used your voice. We see increasing expressions from Hollywood honoring God. I'm just not willing to relinquish it any more than I'm willing to relinquish any other part of my body.
That's right.
So God is greater than any expression of evil. And sometimes I think in the church, we lose sight of that. We don't have to be afraid of the darkness. We just want to turn up the light.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I also think it's so easy for us to look somewhere and want to point the blame for the decline that we see in our country. And Hollywood is a very easy scapegoat for that. You can look to the media and say, oh, wow, they're just proliferating so much garbage. But you know what? I also have to check myself and say, wait a minute. The only reason that Hollywood has so much money to be able to produce these things that I think are filthy is if enough people buy them. And you know, there's a lot of church people in this country. And I wonder if we could take a real survey and find out how many church people are actually funding the very movies and the very industries that we criticize, if we wouldn't just be shocked out of our mind. And I think that the church, we're so big. There's so many of us. We're just the largest demographic in the nation. If we would get our head connected to our heart for the Lord and His ways, and we would just start living out what we say that we believe, we could turn the whole culture around. I mean, I'm not saying it's effortlessly, but we could make the biggest massive difference, and nothing could stop it because we choose what we spend our money on.
We do. Our money, our time, our energy, our focus.
Totally.
And we have a heritage of Christianity. I loved what you shared about California and Hollywood. It's true all across our nation.
Yeah.
We have a heritage that's rooted in a faith in Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's from that faith that the tolerance has extended that's allowed us to be a melting pot.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we lose that faith in Jesus, we will become an intolerant, hate-filled place.
Isn't that the greatest irony? The more inclusive we become, the more we tolerant we become. Really, it's really a sneaky thing, because what the tolerance folks really want to say is, hey, let everybody do what they want to do, and they see the ones who are getting in the way of that are the Bible believers, the Christians, because they say, well, you have a standard, and we don't meet that standard. But the problem is that it's the Christian belief that allows them to even say those things. Go to a country where they don't have religious freedom and they don't have freedom of thought. They don't have economic freedom or political freedom. You won't make it 5 minutes in a country like that because those are, totalitarian in their belief systems. And so what we've got to do is remember that freedom is a gift. It comes from the gospel. It comes from the grace of God.
Amen.
And if we turn around and remove the source of our freedom goes away, and we'll be taken over by somebody else who will be happy to tell us exactly how life must be lived.
Our governor just last week declared October the 10th, which is just coming up. It's a week from this coming Thursday, a day of prayer and fasting across the state of Tennessee. Not a political agenda, just to fast and pray for the heart of our state.
That's great.
So we're trying to figure out how to respond to that and invite people towards that and pray that it catches fire and spreads across the country.
That's awesome. I love that. So
while you're here, we'll get you to pray for Tennessee.
Okay.
We'll recruit all the prayers we can get.
Yeah. Well, please pray for California too. We need a few out there.
How much of the time are you on the road?
Well, it depends on the time of year, but our Living Room Reset Marriage and Parenting Conference takes us out about one weekend a month. Yeah, so I still have plenty of time at home, and yet we're still able to visit quite a few cities around the country to make an impact.
Well, we're asking God for an awakening in His church across our country. When you're asleep, you're not engaged in evil. You're just unaware, unconcerned, and uninvolved. And so we're asking God to wake up His church across our nation to our heritage of faith and to our unique assignment in this season. We have a group of people who come to campus in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, to pray, and they have not missed a day in 18 years.
What?
So we're at least planting the seeds for an awakening. So when the governor stepped up and said, I'll sign a proclamation, we're all in. We've got the municipal auditorium downtown Nashville that night, and we're going to invite people from all over the state of Tennessee to come and pray on behalf of our nation and in our state and what God is doing. I feel like we have a window of opportunity to stand up for righteousness and truth, and we intend to capitalize on that with God's good help.
Can people come from California to join you?
People can come from wherever. In fact, we're hoping that other states will follow suit, that other governors will see the response of the people of Tennessee, and that they will be willing to take that courageous step, because it takes courage these days to step into the public square, particularly if you're a politician, and open a door for Christ followers to pray. But you're absolutely welcome. Bring a bus.
Okay. I'll talk to my wife, see what she says.
See if you get the look.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got to spend a few minutes with Kirk Cameron today, and I very much appreciate your courage, your voice, your thoughtful faith, the effort you expend on behalf of the family and the church and our nation. You have used the platform God has given you for His kingdom. And I just want to thank you for that, because you have made a difference in my life and in the congregation where I serve and in countless people. One day we will stand before the throne of God, and we will see the fruit of what we have done in time. And I intend to get hoarse cheering for you. So thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be talking with you, to be sitting with you here in your office, and to be a part of your ministry here at the church. So thank you. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Alan Jackson Ministries podcast, and for your generosity in helping us get these messages out there for others. So if you feel led, check the link in the description to give. But until next time, stay encouraged.